Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. Hope you're having a good week so far. Last Tuesday, we began session in the Vermont legislature again. So, as I joked to someone last week, I said the circus is back in town. So there's a lot for us to discuss, and in the coming weeks we'll have numerous subjects and bills to talk about. The governor made his State of the State address, and most of his address was regarding Act 73, education, and education reform and taxing. That's going to be, in my view, only one of the top at least 3 or 4 issues. I keep saying it. Public safety, I think, is going to be one of those things that probably winds up competing very heavily with the education reform and taxation that goes with it, because public safety constantly is in the news and on our minds. We all know someone, have a family or family member or friend who has been a victim of some sort of crime, and everybody's at their wit's end. Most people have had enough. So that's the first thing I want to talk about, because here we go again. The left, the gun grabbers, are always testing the fences. And we have, again, a bill in the legislature to ban guns in bars. Or this one is actually, it's coming back. It came out last session, but there is another bill to ban semi-automatic weapons in the state. So I'm a no to both. Okay, just so everybody knows, no. Okay, no. With respect to Burlington, and I think we've talked about this, I've talked about this, Burlington made Burlington's problem. Burlington needs to fix Burlington's problem. And how Burlington fixes Burlington's problem is the voters come to their senses and vote out the people who gave Burlington their problem. That's how you do it. The current mayor and the previous mayor set the stage for the mess that Burlington is today. It's a fact, ladies and gentlemen. It's a stark, hardcore fact. When you have progressive policies, remember the quote from Rob Roper in one of his articles, people experiencing progressive policies. That's what you're feeling, Burlington. Do you not feel safe? It's because of progressive policies. Are you sick and tired of seeing the results of drug addiction all over your city? If you are, then look at what progressive policies have given you, the feeling, the lack of peace of mind that you have, the lack of public safety that you have, and direct it toward the people who gave it to you. That's what you do. That's what you have to do. You have to come to the realization that your progressive elected officials have given you this problem, and you need to unelect them. That's easiest way to do it. Easiest way to do it. So I want to cover this. This is dated January 11th from Granite Grok. We haven't covered Granite Grok in a while. Steve McDonald. Burlington still trying to ban guns in bars. Let's see. For years, the city of Burlington has pursued its salesman's foot in the door strategy to begin broader gun bans in the city. Gun banning Bolsheviks will try anything to get that ball rolling. Get one local isolated ban and then work on it until you have made it almost impossible to exercise your right to self-defense. I'm going to break from the article 1 second. Go back and read the Second Amendment over and over and over again. It is my God-given right. It is, if you do not believe in God, nature, the laws of nature and of nature's God, you are born with the right to defend yourself. Period. End of sentence. I will ban them here, then there, yes. I will ban them everywhere. Burlington has been pining for a bar ban, no firearms in bars. The residents have voted twice to approve it. Legislators have tried repeatedly to get the state to allow it. Localities are prohibited by state law from passing their own local prohibitions. The issue, aside from it violating the Second Amendment, is that there's never been, as far as I can tell, a shooting in a bar. And that's also with respect to this particular case and this particular the charter change, which would allow this law. Without repeating what I've already said about Democrats banning guns, the spark for this particular effort was a shooting outside of a bar, and that's a fact. Supporters say it's needed to reduce the increases in homicides in downtown Burlington and elsewhere. Okay, just to break from the article a minute. The whole situation started with this charter change and gun ban because of an argument inside a bar that escalated to a shooting outside of a bar. Someone was thrown out of a bar, got angry, went and got their gun, and waited outside to confront the person who they originally had an argument with inside the bar. That's the facts on the ground. And that's what needs to be remembered. And this is just an excuse to come after your Second Amendment rights. That's all it is. Let's see. Everywhere, including elsewhere, that is not inside a bar is outside a bar. So I suppose if you're insane enough to want the government to have all the guns, this makes some sense. A guy shoots another guy in front of the bar. We need to ban guns in bars. Okay? The problem of shootings, murders, and crime in Burlington has nothing to do with bar patrons being armed. It is the direct result of other brilliant Democrat ideas which have filled the city with members of rival foreign gangs and tribes who coincidentally hate each other, and other progressive acts that encourage bad behavior and punish anyone who wants to talk truth to it. The city in decline is a direct result of Democrats not armed bar patrons, and that's a true statement. They didn't invite the third world, encourage drug abuse, homelessness, crime, and sex trafficking, unless you mean by voting for Democrats contrary to their best interests. Democrats do use bars, and since Democrats don't trust anyone but the government with guns, which clearly demonstrates a mental handicap that should prohibit them from having the right to vote, disarming them anywhere makes sense to whatever occupies the carapace of bone surrounding their 60cc brains. To be clear, it is never a good idea to consume alcohol while armed, but this does not justify disarming law-abiding citizens. It has also occurred to me to ask why bar owners don't just put gun-free zone signs on the door and around the inside. I want to break from the article here a minute because there was a gun-free zone bar in Maine not too many years ago, and there was a mass shooting inside that gun-free zone, which was a bar. So, and it's in the news. You can go look. It's all over the internet. Back to the article. Those will work just as effectively as a law that no criminal is going to follow anyway. And by advertising that you've disarmed everyone or tried to, it invites shooters or mass shooters to do what Burlington's best and brightest are convinced their ordinance would prevent. Governor Scott may be a northeastern liberal Republican, but so far he's promised to veto any such move giving Burlington permission to make bars its soft targets. Absent the veto-proof majority, this has little to no shot in the 2026 legislative session, but Vermonters have this sad habit of letting Democrats collect political power to their detriment, and the midterms are coming. Well, I want to answer that last point. Yes, the left, the Democrats, the progressives are biding their time because they believe that because history says that Republicans, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, will lose seats, that they're waiting for that moment so they can take the clean heat standard off the shelf, which is just in cold storage, and make your energy more expensive, and take gun bans with respect to in bars in Burlington, and the semi-automatic weapon ban that is a bill. I can't remember the bill number, but I'll try to find it for you, so that they can push their hardcore left-wing, we know best for you, shut up and live your life the way we want you to live it policies. Because that's what this is. There are too many tenured professors, PhDs, master degrees, who have little experience and haven't gotten enough dirt under their fingernails to know that they don't know how to tell everybody how to live their lives. And this is what we see day after day, committee hearing after committee hearing. There are people who are convinced that if we, the people, would just shut up and let them tell us how to live our lives, that our lives would be better. And we know, look at history, okay? Vermont is not an island, and most of you in the listening audience know that. There are incidents all over the country, let alone all over the world, right now unfolding in the past couple of weeks, that show us that hardcore left-wing collectivism policies, anti-individualism policies do not work, except if you're talking about them working with respect to pain and poverty and death. Venezuela is a case. Cuba is a case. Iran is a case. We have seen, history has shown us, history has given us numerous examples of why we should be allowing for capitalism, why we should be advocating all over the world, not just this state, not just this country, for republicanism, why we have a republic and not a democracy, why we have a representative republic and not a democracy. Democracy, ladies and gentlemen, is two wolves and a lamb deciding on what's for lunch. Republicanism, representative republicanism is not. Representative republicanism gives us, representative government gives us respect for the individual. Democracy, as we've seen, over time is going to fail. Ask the Venezuelan people who, after 26 years, are finally back on the path to being prosperous like they were years and years and years ago. Democracy is what got them into the mess they're finally trying to find their way out of. Democracy is what has helped the state of Vermont get into this mess. We have democratic processes that are happening in the State House every session that, because of the way they happen, and because of, and please do not take this the wrong way, because the electorate thinks, most think, I voted, so I did my job. Thank you for voting. Yes, it's a great thing that you voted, but that's not where your job ends. Civic involvement doesn't mean just going out and registering and voting. Civic involvement takes time, and we know here at Right Side Up that you are pressed for time. You have your business, your family, your kids, other groups, church, after-school events, all kinds of things that keep you busy till all hours of the night. But without staying civically involved between elections, you wind up finding out all too late that just voting wasn't enough. So these are why we try here at Right Side Up to keep you informed, let you know what's going on behind the scenes, so maybe you can find a little bit of time during the day to read more, find out who's advocating for what with respect to your individual rights. We've got a break for a commercial here, pay some bills. We'll return in a few minutes. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. And as usual, we started off the show dealing with public safety because it's a big deal to a lot of people. We know that the drug addiction issue is one of the main drivers of the lack of public safety. Most of us know that. I just wanted to go, before we move on to the next topic, which also has to do with public safety, I said I would find the bill number. H604 is the bill that I was talking about. That's a new one, was just introduced. Subject, crimes, firearms, semi-automatic, assault weapons. Stated purpose of bill as introduced. This bill proposes to prohibit the manufacture, possession, and transfer of semi-automatic assault weapons. No. Simple. No. Move on. That's not going to fix the problem. We all know that. We all know it's not going to fix the problem. But that's what we have going on here. One of the other things I want to talk about, this is it was a big deal for a lot of people this summer. I attended a couple of hearings at the courthouse in Orange County regarding this. I got an email. There is going to be an event. There's going to be a public hearing on January 21. I believe it's at 2 p.m. in room 11. The lieutenant governor is hosting a public hearing with regard to mental health issues and the lack of a forensic mental health facility in the state of Vermont. So I wanted to read some, or maybe all, depending on how much time we have here, about an email regarding the mental health issues and crime in the state. Okay, and I'm going to try my best to protect people's names and all this other stuff, but a lot of this needs to be read because I'm sure this hits home for more people than we would really like to have it hit home with. But this email is from a woman named Kelly. I'm going to leave out some names just because I don't have permission to use full names. I'm the mother of Emily, who was tragically murdered in Bennington on January 18, 2021, and I've since become an advocate for victims' rights and for reform in the places where Vermont's criminal justice and mental health systems intersect and too often collide. I've also founded Voices for Vermont Victims, a grassroots advocacy effort to help survivors and families from all over Vermont share their stories with you, their local legislators. This, like I said, came to my legislative email. To help elevate their voices and drive real change. As you tackle these priorities, I respectfully urge you to keep public safety at the center of your work. A strong and safe Vermont is the foundation that supports everything else. Community safety isn't a standalone issue. It underpins every other priority and is essential in our ability to recruit and retain healthcare professionals, educators, law enforcement, skilled tradespeople, veterans, and families who choose to make Vermont their home. When Vermonters feel safe in their communities, every other solution has a better chance of succeeding. I couldn't have said it better myself. At the same time, I encourage you to remember the needs of victims and survivors in your legislative efforts. And I wholeheartedly agree with this. Victim advocacy in this state has fallen too far by the wayside. Specifically, I hope you will consider supporting, and the first one is stronger and clearer rights for victims, especially in cases involving mental health defenses. A competency restoration process so that individuals charged with serious offenses cannot avoid trial indefinitely. Establishing a secure forensic psychiatric facility, potentially through thoughtful renovation of an existing unit at Southern State Correctional Facility, which already houses a mental health unit and serves many offenders. Renovating an existing place may help control costs while filling a critical gap in Vermont's system. These proposals aren't partisan issues, and I agree there. They're practical responses to a system that too often re-traumatizes survivors, leaves families without closure, and undermines public confidence. They're about restoring faith in a system that many victims and families, myself included, have watched fall short time and again. Victims deserve to be heard, protected, and included in the policy process. Each of the Vermont cases below highlights a failure, whether due to a lack of competency, restoration, insufficient forensic psychiatric infrastructure, or a justice system that too often prioritizes the needs of the offender over the safety and dignity of victims and their families. As you read these names and summaries, I ask you to consider the real human cost of inaction and to recognize the urgent need for legislative change that centers public safety, victim rights, and systemic reform. Ida Gurung, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, killed his wife with an axe after she refused to purchase more beer for him. He was initially found guilty, but the judge later declined to sentence him to prison. Darren Pronto, my daughter Emily's killer. For years, he has refused to complete multiple court-ordered competency evaluations and is seeking release through noncompliance and avoidance. Jordan Lawyer killed his father and seriously injured his mother in a violent attack. Brian Crossman, responsible for the murders of his father, stepmother, and stepbrother. Denroy Dasent, charged in a 2022 double homicide in Burlington. His case faced repeated delays due to multiple requests for individual competency evaluations. He was recently found guilty. Matthew Gomez murdered both his parents after multiple mental health related interventions were reportedly requested but not acted upon. Zion Mavish Jame, I apologize for the mispronunciation, killed the coordinator of a Brattleboro homelessness shelter where she had been residing, using a hatchet in the attack. Elijah Campagna murdered a young woman in a Howard Center community-based housing program. A Howard Center mental health provider was present in the home at the time of the incident. James Perry, and this is the case, I think it's James Perry Jr., but this is the case that I followed a few of the hearings, and it was tough to listen, to hear the pain that the victims expressed in some of these hearings. James Perry killed his daughter and was found not guilty by reason of insanity through a plea agreement. He was also assessed as a potential risk for further future violence. Post-trial placement options including a nearly condemned home, a community group home, or a skilled nursing facility, all of which raise serious concerns for the victim's family. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of a deeply troubling pattern in Vermont where individuals charged with violent crimes, often involving serious mental health concerns, have fallen through the cracks of a system without meaningful accountability, oversight, or protections for victims and the public. And the email goes on a little bit, but I just wanted to let a lot of our listeners know that I think one of the things people don't realize, and these are real cases that I listed from in an email that was sent to me, and there are numerous other cases, and this facility that's talked about, and I believe will be talked about on the January 21 public hearing, is desperately needed for this state. But as was expressed in the email, there needs to be a vehicle in law where every victim of people with these mental health issues is able to express and stand up before the court and tell their side. Explain to the court what it's done to them. Because, as I understand it, there isn't a hard and fast provision for this. The other thing is, I want to talk about a story real quickly. I met someone at the Tunbridge Fair. We had a table at the Tunbridge Fair, and people were coming up talking to us about different issues in the state. And one gentleman started a conversation with me. We got onto the subject of addiction. And I expressed to the gentleman, I said, well, people involved with law enforcement, because of their addiction, if they've committed a crime, they're at a crossroads. They need to come to the realization they're at a crossroads, and they need to be given a choice. And he looked me right in the eye, and he said, why do they have to have a choice? And that really caught me off guard. I really didn't know. I didn't know where he was going with it. And he explained to me, he said, look, if they're addicted, they're not in their right mind. So how can we expect them to be making rational decisions? And it really struck me. But he then went into describing to me his situation, where he had a stepdaughter who most days and nights didn't know where she was, didn't know if she was alive or anything about her, because she was addicted to something, some drug. I don't know if it was pills or something else, but she was addicted, and he only saw and heard from her numerous times, had her at the fair 2 years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, the night prior, but tried to get her to come back with him, but he said she responded that she was going to be out with friends. And I immediately thought, were her friends the ones who actually she does drugs with, and would she actually survive that night? So it's just something that needs to be thought about. Should the law be changed so that if you are an addict to some sort of a drug that's causing you to commit crimes, to lie to your family, to steal from your family and others, your community members, are you in your right mind? Should you not be put into a place where people know that you can recover from these drugs once you finally get yourself clean and get into a facility that will give you help with your addiction and give you the responsibility that you need to get back into society? I was talking with someone just yesterday who talked about the Windsor facility that's now closed, that was a working farm that gave everybody who was a resident there responsibility, gave them something to do. I didn't realize this, but from I think it was 7 a.m. to a certain time of night, your room was locked. You could not return to your room. You had to be out amongst the population doing something. And in doing something, you probably had a job or some other responsibility that gave you either a skill or some sort of interaction with the rest of the population there that prepared you once you got back out into the population. The idea was there. I believe you were there for a minimum of a year. And there are people who came out. This person I was talking to said it was great. And I know somebody else who was approached by someone who left that facility a couple of years ago during a campaign to try to reopen it. And this person, a male, said, I was there. It worked. I learned a profession. I got my self-esteem back. I got my self-worth back. I learned something. I got responsibility remembered what that was all about, and now I have something to live for. This is how we fix it. Sustaining an addiction by a so-called safe injection site is only going to kill people, ladies and gentlemen, and let's not kid ourselves. So there are ways to fix this. The mental health issues, we can take these mental health issues and get them under control and keep people safer, both with the mental health, whoever has the mental health issue, and the family members and community members. And we can get this so that people can feel better about their community and feel safer. So we've come again to the end of another segment here. We've got to pay some bills. We'll be right back. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. Before we get back into our discussion on a new topic, I want to just remind all our listeners, if for some reason you are unable to catch us on WNTK Radio, you can go to WNTK.com, find the podcast button, click on it, scroll down to Right Side Up, and you can listen to any number of our shows any time of day or night, and by all means, please share them. You can listen to us on Podbean also. You can find us on 802 Scoop Facebook and 802 Scoop YouTube. You can also find us on GraniteGrock.com. I think I've covered all of them. And I want to thank all of you for listening and spreading the word and sharing. And I just, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about land use and clean air and clean water and clean soil, because I sit on the Environment Committee. It's a very important committee. I really enjoy my job and my committee, and there's going to be a lot of stuff talked about. There's the land use stuff is, to me, it's a big deal, because if you haven't already figured it out, I am a big proponent of individual rights and private property rights. And when it comes to Act 250 and Act 181 and all these other things, the DWSA, the Clean Heat Standard, it all comes down to individual rights and private property rights. How much it's going to cost you, the cost of living in the state of Vermont. All of these things are going to have an effect on whether you decide to stay or to pack your bags and leave for a state that's more affordable. Because currently now, Vermont is extremely unaffordable, and we all know that. So I want to cover an article by Dave Sulia on FYIVT.com. In the past two and a half months, Dave has been putting out some really, really good content here. This article is from January 12, 2026, from $500 million to $1.4 billion. The GWSA money pit deepens. And for those of you who are not familiar with GWSA, that's Global Warming Solutions Act. In April 2025, Senator Ann Watson published an op-ed urging Vermonters to support the Global Warming Solutions Act. The state had, quote, 5 years to take meaningful steps toward reducing climate pollution, end quote, she wrote. Steps that will, quote, ultimately save Vermonters a significant amount of money, end quote. What Watson didn't mention at the time she wrote those words, the Conservation Law Foundation was actively suing the state for failing to meet the GWSA's requirements. The lawsuit filed in September 2024 alleged that Vermont was already off track and that state officials were using, quote, faulty modeling to hide it. Now, I want to break from the article here for a minute. Is anybody familiar? How many of you are familiar with the movie with Kathy Bates and James Caan in it? The movie is called Misery. And in it, there's a scene where Kathy Bates, who has rescued James Caan from a car accident, and she's kind of nursing him back to health, but she decides she wants to keep him around a while, so she keeps him tied to the bed. And out of fear that he will leave, she has him tied to the bed, and she proceeds to, while she says it's for the best, she breaks his leg. And the reason I say that is because that's what the Global Warming Solutions Act is. Okay? We have this statute that was passed. It basically says to Vermonters, we as a legislature have passed this, and this was passed in a previous biennium, that says you must do this or else your cost of living is going to go up. That's what it says. We have mandates that everybody knew were unattainable, and if we do attain them, we will be deindustrializing the state even more than we already have. So I think most of you in the listening audience realize that, but I just wanted to put my little 2 cents in there. So back to the article. The suit was dismissed in July 2025, not because Vermont was meeting its targets, but on procedural grounds. By then, the Climate Council's own 2025 update had confirmed what CLF alleged. Vermont almost certainly missed its 2025 emissions target. And you can see in this article on FYIVT.com, there is a hyperlink. You can view the list of Global Warming Solutions Act yes voters who are still serving in the State House. So you can see, and then if you don't like this, maybe you might want to, and you're a Vermonter and a taxpayer, and you're worried about the cost of living, maybe you can send them a polite email telling them how much you would love to see the Global Warming Solutions Act repealed. Let's see, back to the article. The documents tell a different story. The 2025 Climate Action Plan update, produced by the Vermont Climate Council, contains admissions that contradict the optimism of Watson's op-ed. Vermont has the highest per capita climate pollution of any state in New England. That's a quote, according to the update, which draws on Energy Action Network data. The state has, quote, made the least progress toward Paris Climate Agreement targets of any state in the region. That sounds like alarmism to me, ladies and gentlemen, but that's just me. The plan states Vermont is, quote, increasingly likely to miss its 2030 target. The July 2025 Agency of Natural Resources report projects the state will overshoot its 2030 goal by more than 1.5 million metric tons, roughly 29% above the legally binding target. Meanwhile, New Hampshire, which has no GWSA, no climate council, and did not spend $500 million on climate programs, now has lower per capita emissions than Vermont. According to the Energy Action Network's 2025 report, New Hampshire dropped from 15.3 metric tons per capita in 2019 to 11.5 in 2021, while Vermont fell only from 14.1 to 12.8. Now, I wonder, if I can break from the article again 1 second, that's because when we had the opportunity to get a natural gas pipeline, we didn't find ways to negotiate that pipeline into the state because natural gas is much cleaner than the options we were forced to use instead of the electricity that we don't have yet. All right, let's see. 5 years of progress. The GWSA passed in 2020 5 years later, here is where Vermont stands on key metrics identified in the Climate Action Plan. Okay, let's see. The measure, EVs registered. Okay, the current number is approximately 18,000. The 2030 target is 116,500, and we are only 15% into that progress. Let's see, heat pumps installed. We currently have 68,000 approximately. The target is 169,472. So we are only 41% of the way there with that metric. Heat pump water heaters. We have approximately 21,774 with a 2030 target of 136,558. And we're only 16% of the way toward that target. Homes weatherized, roughly 41,390. We have a target by 2030 of 120,000, and we're only 34% to that target. So after 5 years and more than $500 million in climate spending, Vermont has achieved between 15% and 41% of these targets. The Climate Council's plan calls for at least $1.4 billion more to reach 100% in the next 5 years. At current installation rates, that would require more than doubling, in some categories, tripling the pace of the past 5 years. We can't triple the pace because we don't have the labor, the skilled trades to do this work. All right, let's see. EAN's own numbers. The Energy Action Network's 2025 Annual Progress Report contains a calculation that illustrates the scale of the challenge. To meet the 2030 GWSA obligation, the report says, annual GHG emissions will need to be nearly 2.8 million metric tons lower in 2029 than they were estimated to be in 2024, equivalent to reducing gasoline consumption by over 300 million gallons per year. Vermont consumes approximately 280 million gallons of gasoline annually. EAN's framing means Vermont would need to eliminate emissions equivalent to more than 100% of its current gasoline consumption. What that's saying, ladies and gentlemen, is no gasoline for you. None. Zero. Park your car if it's an internal combustion engine. And diesel. What are we supposed to do to fill our groceries? That's diesel powered. Are we supposed to not buy groceries in Vermont? In addition to reductions in heating, agriculture, and industrial sectors to meet the 2030 target. What 1.4 million buys? The Climate Council estimates remaining installations can be achieved for approximately $1.4 billion. Current market prices suggest otherwise. To reach 2030 targets, Vermont needs roughly 98,500 more EVs, 101,500 more heat pumps, 115,000 more heat pump water heaters, and 78,600 more weatherized homes. At current prices, EVs average 30,000 or more after incentives, heat pumps 6 to 12,000, heat pump water heaters 2,500 to 4,000, weatherization from 8 to 16,000 per home. Total installation costs exceed $4.5 billion, not the 1.4. The 1.4 billion figure accounts only for program costs and incentives, not the amounts households and businesses would pay out of pocket. This is the sleight of hand that we need to come to understand. We're not getting the full picture, ladies and gentlemen. We're only get the picture that certain of our betters want us to see. Let's see. An alternative calculation. If the state is determined to spend money on climate compliance that won't move the global needle, it could at least do so efficiently. And I'm not sure I'm going to get to the end of this article, but I'm going to try. Carbon credits currently trade at $6 to $26 per ton on voluntary and regional compliance markets. Vermont needs to reduce emissions by approximately 2.8 million tons annually to meet 2030 target. At voluntary market rates, that equates to roughly $17 million per year, or approximately $85 million through 2030. At RGGI compliance rates, $26 per ton. The cost would approximately $73 million annually, or $365 million through 2030. Neither figure appears in the Climate Action Plan as a compliance pathway. The global context. Vermont emits approximately, Vermont emits approximately 8 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent annually. Global emissions exceed 50 billion metric tons per year. Vermont represents 0.016% of global emissions. The 2025 Climate Action Plan does not address whether Vermont's expenditures, whether 1.4 billion or 5 billion or any amount, would produce measurable climate impact at the global scale. What is measurable is how quickly people are deciding they're done with Vermont. And that's the thing, and I can't get all the way to the end of the article, ladies and gentlemen, here. We're going to come to the end. But it's a great article, like I said, on FYIVT.com by Dave Sulia. The thing that I'm trying to stress here is, like I always do, the more you pay attention to what goes on, and the more you inform your friends and your family members and your neighbors of what's going on, the more of us are involved, the more of us send emails, the more of us let our legislators know what we want with respect to public safety, with respect to energy policy, with respect to taxation in general, with respect to regulation. The more of us who are involved, the quicker we turn this ship around. So, again, I want to thank our listeners for taking the time out of your day to listen to either on the radio or in podcast form and spreading the word. Just please remember, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay informed, listen to Right Side Up.